anything above the bracket of about $30,000, $35,000, for me, it's not affordable. And again, you can go further and say that an affordable house is 30% of the total household monthly income, what they repay back on a mortgage. So one, you should have a mortgage system. So mortgages generally, they should span between 15 to 25 years. And then their repayment on their mortgage should be about 30% of their income. Now, what makes affordable housing in my own area? One is land. We are specialized in PPPs. We've done success. We have some great successes in huge development. For example, in Nigeria, in Gambia, we don't do anything less than 1,000 units. But we don't buy land, because land is a key component in making housing affordable. So we do PPPs, we approach government. How they get the land is their problem, but we get them to contribute the land as equity into their SPV. A special purpose vehicle is formed where we take a maximum of 80%, government takes 20%, we raise the finance, we develop, sell, and then they take the risk together with us. So what really makes affordable housing, one is land. Access to finance is also another issue. In West Africa in general, apart from the Francophone, interest rates are double digits. So the offtake, it's hardly available. And where it is available, mortgages are expensive. So it's not accessible. So again, finance, both at the offtake level, that's the mortgage, and also at the consequent finance, it's too expensive. It's very, very expensive. So finance is also an issue. So let me just stop with these two, land and finance, and I'll allow my brother Yemi probably to take it up from there.
Yes, Yemi, if you can chip in.
Thank you very much, Mustafa. Good evening, everybody. This is wonderful. At this time of the day, I would have expected that they all would be outfield, but it seems we are talking about something very interesting. And I'm upbeat to be here with you. Government will, political will first and foremost, is very essential for affordable housing. I don't want to go into the differentiation between social and affordable housing. There's a fine line. $35,000 in Nigeria particularly, I don't think a director in the civil service may even be able to raise the money for $35,000, because affordability is based on income. Somebody mentioned it here earlier. And there's a rule, a general rule, a universal rule, and it's a specific federal civil service rule that you cannot use more than 30% of your income to service mortgage. Let's even assume the mortgage is there. If your salary is 100,000 in Nigeria, that means you cannot use more than 30,000 naira to service your mortgage. How many people can afford that? So we won't go into the debate of affordability at this stage, but wherever you have success in affordable housing, you have leadership role being played by the government. If it's not there, forget it. Affordable housing is not for private developers. Private sector developers are into profit making. They only go there if there are incentives for them. And that is why in Abuja, we have houses. We are talking about 17 million deficit, housing deficit in Nigeria. 17 million. Somebody mentioned 1.7, but it's 17 million as at the last count. But we still have houses all over the city unoccupied. They were not built for that level of affordability. So we should get it very straight. Supply is not the problem. I will dwell most of my discussion today on off-takers. We must create effective demand if we must succeed with affordable housing. Because if you build the houses, who are the people going to buy them? If they are willing, they are ready, where's the money going to come from? Let's see if they can raise their equity contribution of 20% or 30%. Who is going to fund the gap? If that gap is filled, at what cost? You just mentioned double digits. Affordable housing cannot succeed without single-digit interest rate finance. Many people have lost their houses because they sign on to 13%, 14%. And what is 14%? That means in 4 years, you are paying double the cost of the house. So we've got to get the facts right. If there are no off-takers, forget about building. In the past, we have a lot of developers, from their head, without doing any market survey, they will go and build. Even with government fund, without considering the demands, effective demands of the off-takers. They go and build in a location nobody wants to live, a size nobody can afford, quality that is not acceptable to anybody. So after committing millions of dollars of fund, you find that nobody wants the property. That is capital tie down. A lot of time, we take housing business to be technical. Yes, it has a lot of technical parts. You must have the architect, you must have the civil engineer, you must have other professionals in the built industry, but there is business of housing. A lot of time, we lose sight of that business side of housing. I'll give an example. I was telling my friend some time ago. When I was in service as permanent secretary in the Office of Head of Service, I was in charge of housing civil servants, between 50 and 100,000 people. And we had a program called FISH program. And that FISH program attracted a lot of developers. And what are they looking for? They're looking for mobilization fee. How much is mobilization fee? 30%. Before they move to site. 30%. And they are in that property, in the equation, after the cost of construction, they want to build in 30, 40% profit margin. How can we achieve affordability with that? The story I'm trying to tell you is, we gave 1,000 units to a particular company. And the rule was, you have the land, you have the expertise, you have the technology, you have the finance. What we offered them in return was bankable off-takers guarantee. Out of about 300 developers that applied for that program, we were able to sign up only 5. So all of them agreed to these conditions. But this one I'm talking about was to build 1,000 units. They raised funds from Jais Bank. But instead of facing the project, this company went out to set out 1,000 foundations. They tried. They finished the foundation. They went to the window level. They went to the lintel level. They couldn't go any further because they're short of funds. So they came back. Sorry, we have gone to this level. We want to call some of the funds. Yeah. Yes. Give us APG, Advance Payment Guarantee. These are some of the things we need to bring into affordable housing. They are more financial in nature, but if you must succeed with affordable housing, we must imbibe some of these financial instruments. The solution to affordable housing is for us the ability to create financial instruments around affordable housing. We have people from outside who want to come in. They raise funds at 1%, 2%, 3%. But usually they ask us for sovereign guarantees. Most of our countries are always shying away from offering sovereign guarantees. But even if you cannot offer sovereign guarantees, we should be able to meet them halfway. They need some comfort, they need some exit strategy, and if we, in our various countries, can develop access to guarantees, bankable off-takers guarantees. There are so many people out there who are ready to come into our continent, build, and take their money on completion. The lady that sat here the last time paid off-plan for a property. And that's a story all over the continent. In Nigeria, even within the fish program that I was supervising, some contractors collected money, 30% off-plan, from about 100, 200, 500 people. Each time you go there, that's your foundation. You need to balance before you pay. So there must be a way of managing risk of the off-takers. If you don't do it, you put people at risk. And I think I want to stop here so that my brother can continue. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, great experiences and great insights there. I mean, you've both actually, in a sense, touched on some certain solutions. So I guess the question that I'm going to pose now is, looking at the ecosystem in the Western African region, who are some of the partners that you reckon an affordable housing solution provider should source for to be able to have a successful project? I mean, I've had Mr. Njie's cite PPPs. I mean, people have talked about cooperative societies and other strategic partners. Whom have you in the past partnered with to be able to sort of cover the gaps and mitigate some of the challenges that you have in delivering this affordable housing? Mr. Njie?
Yeah, okay, all right. Let me just say that we have been in this business for 30 years now. And this is a business I started myself. And I've worked in construction for 43 years now. I have accessed Shelter Africa financing 3 times. My first loan from Shelter Africa was in 1998. I'm sure people are looking at me and say, oh, does he really look this old? Yeah, but we've successfully paid back our loans to Shelter Africa. Yes, we've partnered with institutions like Shelter Africa. These days, actually, in finance, if you know how to package a product, there is financing that is available locally. For example, in Nigeria, the banks are huge. I mean, what you look out, from places like Shelter Africa, you can find it in the local banks now. We raised in our Port Harcourt project about $25 million. So financing is available, but again, as he said, it's the offtake. We've also found a niche within our business targeting diasporans. I think in Africa today, one must look at remittances into Africa, in sub-Saharan Africa. This plays a huge part in our economy. Actually, in Western Africa, some countries, it's about 20% of GDP. And risk, again, in mitigating your risk, I mean, these are people who will pay in hard currency. So we have a model where we develop for those people within this bracket. So we're paid in hard currency, so we partner with them. We go around market to wherever we have, numbers of Gambians, to be specific, and sell them our product. Then we do attract the lower segment of society within our country, taking a different risk on local currency. But partnering again, as I said earlier, we partner with governments. When we partner with government put in the land. I don't want to repeat this. I would think looking ahead, we need to partner with the DFIs. I mean, the IFCs, they need to come in. I guess IFC can bring in, significant funds at lower rates, and also the tenure must be long. I mean, I think in development, you cannot use funds less than 10 years. It should be 10 years and above, and then DFIs like IFC, the African Development Bank, partnering with them on longer tenure and low interest rates will make a difference. The other thing on the supply end in partnering, it's capacity of developers. You did ask about, I'm sure you haven't reached there yet, of how we built the African Union presidential villas. We developed 52 African presidential villas in 4 months, and using local labor. There was nothing foreign. And again, we are an advocate of being a Pan-African developer and using African labor. And again, we use brick and mortar. In development, actually, from my experience, it's more of project management. You need to have the materials at the site on time. You need to have the right manpower to build this at the right time.
Okay.
So partnering, really, I would say, for me, government is my biggest partner.
Okay.
And maybe finance, from the DFIs.
Okay, so if I hear you right, you're talking about managing your procurement process, managing your project so that you make sure that everything is spick and span, and that's how you're able to achieve those kinds of timelines in terms of delivery of a project.
Indeed.
Okay. Mr. Delakun?
Yes. Thank you very much. He's a technical man, so I won't delve into those areas. It's important that we have proprietary technology, like the ones that we have demonstrated here. Yes, you want to be conventional and traditional, but if we must deliver 17 million housing deficit in Nigeria, we've got to do something better. You actually must go into housing manufacturing, and there are technologies around the world. We are going to use local labor, easy to train them. We are going to use local materials. So we should, while we still continue with the conventional and traditional methods, we should look outside and bring in some technologies. But more importantly, and I'm a bit upbeat about the off-takers, I'll talk about cooperatives. Kenya has done so well in cooperative housing model. I was hoping that the gentleman that did the solar presentation, he put up something about cooperative housing model. I think I'll see him after and see if we can share some thoughts. That's an area that could help us deliver affordable housing with ease in Africa. Social capital. We call it in Yoruba land Isusu, market women. And a gentleman asked a question there earlier. How do we consider people in the informal sector? Mortgage can take care of only about 7 to 10% of our population. Outside that, what happens to them? You must find a means of bringing them into the fold. And cooperative housing has proven to be a very good partner in this particular business. Unfortunately, cooperative housing in Nigeria is still very, very limited. And I'm trying to see what we can do with collaboration of all concerned to start up a very sustainable cooperative housing movement in Nigeria. It will surprise you. A country of 180 million, as at the last count, some people are talking about 200 million already. The mortgages that we can remember that has been delivered within 100,000. So what has happened? Who is funding others? It must come from somewhere. We must encourage off-takers on their own to play their part. And their part is to make sure that they engage in savings continuously. So that when even you can find mortgage or somebody to give you credit of 80%, you should be able to come out with your 20%. And 20% of, you talk about $30,000? 10% of $30,000 is $3,000. That's a lot to come by for average Nigerians. Up to date, the annual, the minimum wage is 18,000 naira per month. Government has graciously increased it to 30,000 naira per month. And if you don't know, the conversion rate from naira to dollar is 360. $1 is 360 naira. So do your calculation. So it's not going to be very easy for somebody to bring 10, 20% equity contribution at a go. But if they start contributing, even if it's 1,000 to 2,000 every month, by the time you have 1 million people doing that contribution, it's a lot of money. And money brings money. For those people who are ready to finance you, they want to see your starting point. If you can show it, it will be very easy for you to be able to attract funds. So partnership is very important. Technology, you have to partner the technology owners. You have to partner government very importantly. Government is almost everything. Today we were talking about the time it takes to get approval for your design. Time value of money is very important. While somebody is sitting on your file, 3 months, 6 months, you're already incurring costs. You've got to take all those into consideration. So there must be ease of doing business approach in each of these our countries. And it takes government's political will, leadership role, and willingness to subsidize in some cases. It doesn't even have to be social housing before you get subsidy. In Nigeria, land speculation is big business. So if you want to develop affordable housing and you have to go to these speculators, you have to cost. So if the government, I'm not saying you should give the land free of charge, but give direct allocation to those who want to build affordable housing, and you'll be sure that somebody talked about 6% cost of land of the price of house. But in Nigeria, it's 30% if you go to the market. But if government is going to come up and say, all right, social housing, mass housing, we are going to give you at cost, then you can bring the percentage to about 10%. And that will help us a lot to reduce cost of building and achieve affordability in housing. Thank you very much.
Okay. That's an interesting thing. You're actually developing a discipline of saving, and in so doing, you're also developing in them the discipline of being able to repay their facilities in the long run. Okay. There's hopefully I can just ask one more question, and then I can invite some questions from the audience. I don't know how I'm doing for time. Hopefully we are good. Oh, okay, fine. So I guess then what I just wanted to make just hear your comment very briefly, because I see there's some questions from the audience. Other than the house itself, what else? Because we've spoken a lot about house, how to deliver the unit, how to reduce the cost of that particular dwelling unit. But what else in that ecosystem is actually important to deliver to have an affordable housing experience? Because it's one thing to deliver a cheap house, but is that it? And what else do you have to put in? Sanjay, just briefly, I mean.
Yeah, okay, briefly. I think infrastructure is key.
Okay.
Infrastructure must be there, but not only infrastructure, I think also location of development.
Yes.
We try to do mass housing, as I said, like new cities.
Yes.
So because most of the time you'll find that your end users, spend a lot of their disposable income into commuting. So if you have somebody who lives, let's say, if you go and have a development 20, 30 kilometers away,
Yep.
And then have to commute every day into the city.
Correct. Yeah.
That takes a lot of money from them. So I think in developing, we should look at mass, but also make it mixed use. So, for example, government, you can cater for government having offices there. The private sector can have things there where people will go into the concept of live, work, and play. Schools must be built there. Other amenities must be built there. So you limit their movement. Most of the time, that's the problem. You move them away from the main city, from their workplace, but you don't have, amenities for them to use, or workplaces where people can work. So industries can be developed along there. So I advocate on doing mixed use, where you do not only accommodation, but you do offices, industries, and obviously sporting facilities, which is now an industry of its own.
Okay. Briefly, Mr. Adelakun.
Yes, infrastructure is very key. Utilities, water, power, sanitation, they're very, very important. Access to healthcare, schools, other things are very, very important. And capacity building is one major area that we need to take seriously.
Okay.
I'll give you an example in Nigeria. If you don't want to hire a tiler from Togo, from Ghana, from Benin Republic, you may not get a tiler in Nigeria. masons are getting very old now. Nobody wants to go into that. So we need to actually develop institutions that contribute towards capacity building so that we will not rely too much on expertise from outside, and make sure we use a lot of local materials. Okay. Windows, doors, ceilings. Yeah. If you're still importing them from somewhere, you have not started. Thank you very much.
Understood. So I have about 3 minutes, so I'll take the question from the gentleman to my immediate left, and then I think that's really all the time we have, just for the one question, and then we can pack it at that. I guess Mr. Nji and Mr. Adela are available after this, so if you want to have specific questions for them, you can ask them.
Okay,
please, if you can introduce yourself and just your question.
Thank you very much. My name is Akiteginu Seyakubu. I'm from Nigeria. I'm so glad I have the two panelists coming from the two angles that control the affordable housing. First, we have had a discuss, and all seems to be hopeless. Hopeless in the sense that finance and affordability are tied together. It's clear off-takers have no resources to uptake the houses. It's clear we have a limit to expanding on the houses. But we are so much concentrating on affordability ownership. What is important, why can't we create convenience in housing? Why don't we insist and ensure that there are adequate houses to live in under an arrangement that can guarantee repayment? If you say you don't have the resources, if you say the income is low, if you say the cost must be maintained within a certain level, how do you ensure return on investments? How do you ensure the houses built could be sold? If that is not possible, why don't we create an avenue whereby we have affordably convenient houses to live in? I have always have a mind to think over. I always compare housing with transport. No country said we have 5,000 deficit in cars, but people move. They pay for services. They move from places, but people still buy cars through loans, and they have they hire cars on purchase. Why are we not thinking along that direction in housing? Why must we insist that everybody must own a house? I don't believe we have deficiencies. I don't believe we have backlogs. I only believe we should provide convenience in housing. This is very key, and I think the discourse should change. Affordability should not be tied to ownership. Ownership has restrictions. We have all identified it. Adelabu, you are from the civil service, you know what is happening. You are from the financial sector, you know the difficulties. Yes, we have had successes, but the thinking should change slightly to creating avenues that human beings can have houses that is convenient, affordable, and sustainable. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. That's actually more of a comment than a question. If I can just make one brief comment and then we can conclude. I don't know if it was really a comment more than a question. But in my experience, I mean, Sita actually gave us a very good breakdown on where the cost centers are. And I mean, we talk a lot about blended finance and impact investing. My take is there's a need for the whole value chain to look at that impact investing in order to address this affordable housing solution. And I think in that way we can have a central meeting point where we can address some of these challenges. But anyway, I don't know if you have further comment to what he said, and then we can.
I don't want to be misunderstood. When we talk about affordability, it doesn't have to be sale of property or purchase of property. Affordability could also be into rental. We have situations in Nigeria, Lagos State government, for example, have this program called Rent to Own. But there's also costs to that. We need people, the builders will not want to wait for 30 years to collect their money. They want to get out after construction, and somebody must come in to fund the rental. Those are the areas I was talking about when I talk about finance. Yes.
I will give you a typical example.
Yes.
When the federal government houses were sold,
Yes.
I had a friend, a medical doctor, who bought his house at 9 million,
Yes.
at 9% interest. I sat down with him. I said, "You're happy you got a house at 9 million at 9%. Say, how much are you going to pay a month?" He says, "You're going to pay 100,000. 100,000 in 12 months is 1.2 million. It's only offsetting his loan by 300,000. How many of Nigerians in the civil service can afford 100,000? It's not possible. Whatever you do, you have to tie it. But if you tell me that the interest is going to be on the mortgage and be guaranteed as part payment for his mortgage, that is real. But is it real? Is it attainable?
Anyway,
Can I just ask?
we can talk
just a quick-
after this.
I want to
discussion,
fire a
yeah.
question to the general forum.
Okay.
Yes, in
final.
conclusion.
Actually, this should be a takeaway. Is affordable housing delivered in Africa a myth or a reality? We should ask ourselves these questions. Because really, let me land, I do come to forums like this very often. Is it just a talk shop? Or is it a reality? This we can discuss in the corridors. Thank you.
Thank you for the stimulating conversation, and thank you for your time, gentlemen. I believe they're available and you can pick up this conversation further. Thank you.